I'm Judy Lyne, CEO of Women's Housing Limited. Karen, you want to?
I'm Karen Janisevsky. I do Judy's project work.
Yes, so we're here to basically talk to you about our project that we've submitted for through Homes Victoria to build homes here in Shepparton for women, mainly aiming for women experiencing family violence and older women. That's our key target group, and that's who we are seeking to house in this local area. So we've been established for some time. We've built quite a few properties. We were successful in the last round to build quite a few properties down in the southwest of Victoria, being Portland, Warrnambool, as well as Hamilton. We started those properties. We have met with local services down there. So this is kind of what we would like to be doing in Shepparton as well. So hopefully we get funded for these projects and we'll be able to house these women. Karen, do you want to talk about the actual project?
So I think I'm not telling you anything you don't know as to why this project is so important for Shepparton. You've got higher rates of family violence, so that really means it's very important. So we've submitted for round 2. We have submitted for 45 dwellings, a blend of 2 and 3 bedroom dwellings, all single level, all built by Metricon, and Metricon built more than half of the dwellings on the first stage of Parkside Gardens. We're aiming for 7 stars, green buildings. We'll work with council on the design, although I will say that council officers have seen the design, but we're happy to work with council and the town planning team to make sure it's a quality outcome that blends with the existing community.
So I think that what Karen's sort of talking there is especially around assisting women also to, like in our tenancy management, linking them into local services. We would expect to house local women from the local area. Myself, personally, I lived in Wangaratta for about 20 years and also managed the Women's Refuge over there, so I'm quite au fait with the local area as well.
And women's housing is well regarded for working in with the local services and the local community. We house people, we don't deliver services. We expect the people who actually are on the ground delivering that. But that's who we will work really closely with. And
who we link in with.
Yeah.
So we've run a number of programs like that, but generally it'll be through local council, but it will be through the local services that already exist in this area.
So that's...
so anybody?
We're happy to take questions.
Any points of clarification or anything to add? And we have had quite a bit of briefing on this, so yeah, but thank you so much. It's really always great to come in and have a chat and a bit more information. Councillor Summer?
I've got lots of questions, but I'm not sure this is an appropriate forum to be asking questions during submission.
What's a clarification?
Point of clarification.
Okay. So you're saying these are local women. So when you say local, do you mean Shepparton?
Yeah, Shepparton surrounding areas.
So greater Shepparton.
So when we tenant, the priority areas will be for women in the Shepparton local government areas around it, right? But they're, when you're assuming, say we get the 45 properties, it comes up, like you're not going to have 45 people straight away that are going to link straight into that particular development, right? So, but over time, so I'd suggest they would come from wide areas, probably from Wangaratta as well, or around that area, Benalla maybe, but it will be targeted at this local area first. In other words, we're not importing people, is that what you're concerning about?
Oh, well, it was about the question, and in your experience, you may or may not have experienced this, but abusive partners who may locate these women and turn up on their doorstep, knowing that is a crisis.
There is, yeah. I think that where we get to, it's more the ones that are post that crisis time. Okay, as I said, I worked in the Wangaratta Women's Refuge, high security refuge, for some time. It was very difficult because women would come in, but we had to get them out because we couldn't house them in Wangaratta for a whole range of reasons, the local women. But I think that sort of thinking has moved on now, and we have the police force probably operate in a different kind of way. We've also got different laws that ensure the security of women. So rather than having, I mean, there is that group, I accept, that pointy end group that really do need to escape the local area, but there are a big proportion of women that once they leave and once they are offered really good, secure accommodation with their kids and they can get on with their lives, they can find employment, usually that will occur.
So that in your experience, they don't just tend to gravitate back to the cause?
No, there's probably, when I say that, there are many reasons why women choose to go back to a violent situation. 9 times out of often it's out of fear, right? That is that particular group, but quite often it's usually around kids, right? So when there's a separation, women usually separate if they go into very low income because they're on pensions. Kids aren't very happy because they're not getting, the new shoes or whatever else they need. It's really difficult, right? So there are so many complexities that I could, probably for the many years that I worked in a high security women's refuge, probably everybody that came through had a different story.
Okay.
Okay, Brove just had a point of clarification.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Judy. Just, I've got a point of clarification. There's been a suggestion, and I just want to get maybe your thoughts on the suggestion that instead of having the 45 dwellings together in that one part of the subdivision, that if the whole subdivision was opened up to 90 dwellings and it was spread out over that whatever percentage that may work out to be, would you be welcome to that particular suggestion instead of having the 45 next door to each other but spread out over that subdivision?
The reason that would be okay if we knew about it before we put the submission in, I'll put it that way, because when we put our submission in, it's based on that amount of land on that plot at that particular time, right? There is no changing the submission. So we, even to increase the land size only very minutely, in a previous submission that we did down at Camperdown, we did that. It has cost us an extra 250,000, I think it was, and that was a very small site. So we're very sensitive to price movement and cost.
I think what we could say, Councillor, is women's housing wouldn't object to it. It's just the rules and the constraints and the procedures put around us by Homes Victoria and the Victorian Government would make that incredibly challenging for us.
For us to deliver.
And it would be expensive for us. So in principle, we would be, yes, it would be absolutely a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately,
Practicalities, yeah.
It's the practicalities of dealing with, the Victorian Government and the way they have made us structure these deals and put them up.
So it is around that affordability thing. And the other thing is we have to borrow. So we borrow on average 20 to 25% of the total cost of the project of everything we build, and we pay it back with social housing rents over a period of time. So the interest rate's going up today. Always helpful. But yeah, so it's not like government comes along and says, "Beauty, here's all this money, you can go off and do whatever." It's a very, it's very
those constraints are there, then that wouldn't be the impediment.
Yeah.
Just one more minute to go. Yes, Seema.
Yeah, quickly, of all the projects that you have done, what's the largest project that you have done and how many houses?
We did 49-unit development down at Corby Street in Bentley, so there's 49 that we have there.
Similar kind of...
That's apartments. They're all apartments.
And we're doing 53 apartments in St Albans currently.
Yeah, and the others, we've got 27-unit apartment block that we did one still like in Bayswater, and then 10 years later we did it 8 years later we did 24 next door. So we are used to managing those kinds of concentrations.
Right. Okay, thanks.
And in an apartment block is probably more challenging than with townhouses. With townhouses, it's a bit of a walk in the park compared to what we normally manage.
Right. Is there anything else to add? We've got a little bit of time, just under the.
Anything.
We're happy
anybody-
to answer any other questions.
Yeah, or if you wish to contact me or anything, we've got the contact details on.
Oh, no,
here.
you haven't, but, Mike, we've
Yeah,
contacted
if you
you.
mind sending it around any time, just give me a call, phone number or an email, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Karen.
Bye. All right, would you like to make a start? We've got 10 minutes.
Yes, well, I'm just going to speak to the submission that I put in on behalf of and for the people from North Shepparton. And I want to say too that a lot of people didn't sign the petition because they were afraid of retribution. Don't ask me what, but that's the mindset, unfortunately. So there was quite a few. Anyway.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. I'm just going to read from the submission, all right?
I'm sure.
I would like to submit an objection to the proposed sale of 45 Parkside Drive, Shepparton, for the following reasons, which were identified at a community meeting in the North Shepparton Community Hub. Providing affordable housing is not seen by the community as the problem. The problem is the clustering of the affordable housing in one area. A better option would be to place only 10 or even 20% of the requested affordable housing development in that estate and then spot buy other blocks of land to ensure that the area maintains its diversity. 90 to 80% of the development proposed land should be opened up for new homeowners to develop, especially where there is a shortage of land to buy. Excuse me. North Shepparton went through a neighbourhood renewal 20 years ago to declutter the cluster of affordable housing in the area and make the community a safer place to live. This has worked. It has enabled diverse community to build new homes and change the North Shepparton landscape. $13 million was funded by the government to diversify the community, which the Greater Shepparton City Council was not only a part of, but a leading partner in driving that change. The council should be well aware of the historical issues that face the North Shepparton community and the reasons behind the renewal. Promises to the community were made that clustering of any affordable housing would not happen again, and these promises were not only from council, but also from government officials. Clustering affordable housing in North Shepparton has been tried and failed before. You only need to look at the historical problems and data that was highlighted by the neighbourhood renewal of North Shepparton, which is commonly referred to as the ghettos. Although the North Shepparton residents have diversified and the area has continued to be a safer place to live, North Shepparton continues to be stigmatised and isolated from the broader community. This is an extra disadvantage to add to people who are escaping violence and bringing with them their own trauma. It is inappropriate to isolate a cluster of disadvantaged people together who will need support to access change. How are they going to move forward, being that the neighbours who will be their supports are dealing with the same trauma? Who shows them there is a way out of this continual cycle? It was proven through data collected in the renewal that estates that have high concentration of affordable housing are more likely to be high in crime, violence, and lead to unsafe living conditions for those that live in and nearby. Having an estate of approximately 45 houses clustered in the one area that are specifically identified for women from domestic violence situations could increase the risk of perpetrators searching for their victims and committing crimes of violence upon them once again, especially if they are local families from the community. Where is the safety for these women and children? This increases the chance of more trauma being inflicted not only on the residents, but also on the neighbouring houses. There are no affordable recreational opportunities for children from low-income families currently in the north end of Shepparton. Yes, we have all of the sporting facilities in the north of Shep, but the cost of participating in those sports for some parents are an extra luxury that is just not in the budget, which in turn creates youth boredom and increases the chance of antisocial behaviours within the youth. The current design in the planning development shows that there will be, again, courts and cul-de-sacs in the estate, and it was proven from data collected during the neighbourhood renewal that in these areas, Dead-end roads cause problems with emergency services attending sites, including ambulances, police and fire brigade. Add to that, the plan shows one road in and out of the estate. This will also prove difficulty to access for emergency services or evacuation for people within the estate. I would request that the council take the time to go and look at the other clusters of affordable housing in Shepparton before making the decision to approve this development. Have a look at how these estates are currently coping, including the old nursing quarter at the Marutna Hospital. They have to employ security guards. And the estate off Channel Road. Both are examples of what does not work when clustering affordable housing. Speak with the police and other emergency services who service the areas where there are a high content of affordable housing. Gain the true insight into what it really is like on the ground in these areas. And I would like to add, that finally, and in conclusion, I've been on both sides of the fence in public housing now for 30 years. I've won awards, I've done all this community stuff, and when I found out that this cluster was going up, I could have cried. I thought, why are you doing this to the poor vulnerable people who are going to live there? You might as well put a big sign up and say, vulnerable people. And that's all I would like to say now. Well, I'd really like you to think it through.
Thank you, Andrea. Probably my only comment is they're not all from really vulnerable backgrounds. It's actually a very wide range of people that actually need this type of housing. So that's just probably my comment on my observation on what you presented. But no, I really appreciate that. Any other points of clarification that someone would like to raise?
No, thank you.
No. All right. Thank you so much. Hello, Leanne. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
No, pleasure. So we've got 10 minutes and there'll be a bell at 9 minutes. So good to go.
Right. Okay. Tell me at the 2-minute mark, if you don't mind, if we're running out of time. Thanks. So really appreciate this opportunity to be heard. Thank you. I'll try and keep it fairly simple. I've really just got 3 key messages that I'd like to convey and chat with you about. One is, firstly, congratulations on all the work that you're doing for affordable housing, really important stuff. So great to see that that's happening. The second one is a conversation around the key strategic direction within the affordable housing strategy being pepper pot developments rather than cluster developments. And then the third one is just to focus on the importance of this decision in terms of whether you proceed with the sale or not. And, you know, really taking that seriously, which I'm sure you are, but just being sure that you're not relying upon future consultations and future planning applications. You know, now's really the time. So to begin with, you know, in terms of commending you for your action on affordable housing, that's terrific. And I think one of the really great things that has come through and is really apparent now is that there's a really strong community interest in this. So there's an opportunity to use the expertise and experience within this room and also that of the community to actually look for innovative solutions. So that's a really positive step forward, I think. And just in terms of Council's affordable housing strategy, I just really highlight, and I'll read it, it says that a key strategic direction is that affordable housing, wherever possible, should be pepper potted throughout new and existing residential developments rather than concentrated in a specific location. So, you know, that's my key concern around this one. And I see that that concern aligns with Council's key strategic direction. And I see that that key strategic direction was developed for a reason. You know, when that strategy was developed, I'm sure there was a lot of expertise and a lot of consultation put into that. So my understanding is that the Women's Housing Association, or Limited, does not believe in pepper potted developments. That's not their experience, but simply because it's not their experience, I think it's a very significant matter for Council to diverge from their key strategic direction because of that. So if you do proceed with the sale, I'd really just highlight the critical importance of making sure that there's significant risk mitigation in place. So, You know, what security measures will be in place? Have the police been consulted with? What experience in regional areas does the women's housing have? Just having a look on their website, and you'll know more about this than I do, but their website states, and I'll read again, that their properties are well maintained and are located throughout Metro Melbourne. So it describes their focus on projects that will target women and children escaping domestic violence and older women, and it refers to them as vulnerable women. So that highlights the importance of making sure that any proposed development is not exacerbating that level of vulnerability. The website lists projects in West Brunswick, Bayswater, Bentley and Williamstown, for example, but I note that Council's media release does mention experience in regional areas. So perhaps if you could maybe share that experience that they have got in regional areas, you know, so that the community can understand what those regional projects are that they've done, because clearly regional projects are very different to metropolitan. And it's also an opportunity, I think, for council to take the learnings from any regional projects that they would have. I think it's unusual that they don't actually list on their website their experience in regional projects. Now, the third message, you know, is really just ensuring that all of the risk mitigation, all of the consultation is done at this stage, because once it's sold, you know, then it proceeds through the planning application process. And as I understand it, there's nothing in the planning application process to prevent a development of this type. And, you know, there's also a possibility it may get called in. So as you well know, yeah, and this is what you're doing now with your community consultation, it's critically important that for the good of the community, you really dot the I's and cross the T's as thoroughly as possible. And I think it's important to take the lessons from the past Parkside renewal experience, because there are some very real synergies there. I'll quote from a media release. This media release goes back to 2007 and it talks about the Parkside renewal. It's an Age media release, an Age article, and the heading is actually "From Ghetto to Garden State, a Suburb is Reborn." And it compares the old Parkside housing, which some of you might remember, I'm sure, to a scene from a New York gangster movie with burnt out cars, broken fences, regular assaults and known drug houses. And, you know, that's no exaggeration. I certainly remember that that's what that was like. And it also then goes on and commends the Parkside renewal work on the transformation that occurred and highlights the significantly reduced crime rates that took place as a result of that Parkside renewal. And it describes the program of renewal as one which included the demolition of a crowded cluster housing as an example of the importance of mixing different class groups and of giving people a sense of ownership. So again, that's consistent with the key strategic direction of Council's affordable housing strategy. The article concluded at the time in quoting Robin Sharp, who was then the local senior constable, and he actually said that cluster housing was a nightmare. That was a direct quote from him. And he highlighted that in one court, there was only about 8 houses, but you then had 15 burglaries a year, and that once the Parkside renewal project was in place, it was nowhere near as bad. So in conclusion, you know, I think Council's really sitting in a prime opportunity here to consult with the community to work on really innovative solutions for affordable housing. I know that it's challenging, but I think the conversation is open there, and it seems there's a number of willing people in the community to work with Council. Secondly, please, I highlight the importance of remaining consistent with Council's key strategic direction of pepper pot development rather than cluster development, you know, for the reasons that I've listed and for that very experience that has already happened here in Shepparton. It would be terrible to have that recreated some decades later. And then thirdly is I just say don't sell the land with the aim for further community consultation down the track. Now's the time for that. If the land's sold for the purpose of 45 single dwellings designed to accommodate vulnerable women and children, then that's what's going to occur. So the risk mitigation, the good governance has to be in place now to ensure that those mistakes from the past are not repeated. So I really just encourage you to ensure that the risk mitigation is thorough, complex, and that you work very hard to avoid unintended negative consequences that were seen in the previous Parkside public housing. So that's it in a nutshell, and I wish you well on the journey of affordable housing. So thanks for hearing my submission.
Thank you so much, Leanne. We'll just see if any councillors need any point of clarification. Everyone happy? All right, thank you so much, Leanne. Appreciate you coming in. Bye.
Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I just wanted to speak to the submission I put in, and probably it starts off about the current residents purchasing their land and property. It was based on the fact that they expected that estate to go right across the whole of the block. And that was what they were told, so I'm told, because I wasn't an original. They were told that's what it was going to be when they purchased their land. If they'd known that this sort of development was going to be put there, they wouldn't have bought it. But it's really not fair to them that the council's considering now selling this to low-cost housing. Those people will have their properties devalued. And there are a lot of young families in there. I'm an old person. I'm there, and my big problem is safety. And I find that a very safe area to live at the moment. But if this goes ahead, I'll sell out. I wouldn't stay there with that sort of cluster housing next door to me. It's nice to, I know we've got to have low-cost housing for people, I don't deny that, but we've already been through it with the Olympic Avenue, Parkside estate, and it proved a disaster. And they ended up having to sell a lot of the housing off to private owners. And even now, it's still not what you would call safe to walk through at night. But I find it very difficult for having bought in there 7 years ago to now be confronted with this. I think the concerned residents group is being driven by two women who live on Parkside Estate, not Parkside Gardens. And they live through the Parkside Estate debacle, of course. And they said they never want anyone to live through that sort of thing again. And it's known that cluster housing is not the way to go for these people. And there's a report in 2010 by Ian Martin, who I think was Director of Community Affairs or something at this council, who said that Parkside Estate had been a disaster and they had to get rid of the cluster housing that was in there. So I don't see why the council want to put us through this again and create another Parkside Estate. That to me is a particular concern. They're already at the concerned meeting, the concerned residents meeting, there was a member of the ambulance who came along, doesn't live in the estate, but he was concerned that that would cause all sorts of trouble for the ambulance people. There was a member from Emergency Services who lives on the estate, and he said exactly the same thing, that there's one road in, it's not a safe environment, there's only one road in and one road out, and therefore, and that road actually apparently does not meet the standards for road making. I know nothing about them, but I've been told that that road isn't even up to standard. But if anything happens in there, they have that cluster housing in there and have one road out, or if someone's in trouble, it's very easy for someone to block that road off and prevent them from moving. There's already a large number of intervention orders in Shepparton, and to bring 45 women in, and I don't know where they're going to come from, but I understand they could come from anywhere in Victoria. And I also understand, I could be right or wrong about this, that it's actually short-term housing for women who are in a bad situation. Now, I had in the back of my mind, I've got somewhere where I've read it's going to be short-term housing for 6 months for those women till they can become established somewhere else. Now, to get them out of their situation, they're not going to be people from Shepparton where the perpetrator can go around there in 2 minutes and go and see them, but they're going to be brought from others. So we've already got a problem with those socio-economic groups in Shepparton. We see the problem down Channel Road where someone outside of the council bought property off a developer and put small low-income housing on it, and immediately there was trouble down there. Now, you can say what you like, and look, there's some wonderful people who love it, and I've got friends that are low-income people, but generally, where there's a group of low-income people together, it becomes trouble. And I don't want to live near that. And I don't think anyone else who bought in the Parkside is going to say wants it, because they've established a very nice little community. And so I think the council's got to take into account that they owe a duty of care to these people who bought in there. It's not just the low-income people the council owes a duty of care to. Now, I know you've got a problem with how to have low-income people, and all the reports say that they should be put in individual houses and scattered amongst the community, not into cluster housing. And I don't know why. I mean, I know there's an opportunity for the council to get $1.7 million and lose a thing that's costing them money at the moment. But I don't see that they don't owe a duty of care to the residents that are already there. So probably that's all I wish to say at this point.
Thank you, Barry. Just some clarification for the councillors. Councillor Dobson?
Yeah, Barry, Jeff Dobson.
Oh, I don't know who you are.
Barry, on that whole estate, there is potential for between 80 and 90 blocks of land, not 45.
That's where, yeah, no, sorry, I meant to bring that up.
What would what would both of your opinions be if we were to put a reduced number of social housing opportunities within the 80 or 90? Let's say 10 or 20%.
If it was 10% of the 90, I'd say go ahead and do it, that's fine.
What about 20%? That would make it 18 out of 90.
It's starting to impact, and they'd be starting to get into groups. But 10% I wouldn't have a problem with.
Okay.
And I'd like to know, because you're selling the whole of that thing to the women's refuge house, why they aren't saying they're putting 45 cluster houses when they've got 92 blocks? Is it going to be ghetto by stealth? They do the first 45, and then when they finish those, do they put the next 47 and say, well, we've got 92 blocks, we've got to fill them?
Can I just ask a question? That's the proposal, is it to sell the whole 90 blocks?
No, I'm just asking your opinion. I'd rather
That's
have.
what the proposal
Shows on
shows.
But I'd rather have your opinion as to if the whole 90 were made available, what would you see as a percentage that you would be comfortable with for social?
10% I'd be comfortable with.
Thanks, that's all I did.
But Ethos Urban's report shows the whole 92 blocks being sold to the women's refuge. And I've got to say, the Ethos Urban report is just, it looks to me like a report that they have for every council that they fill the names in on. And it takes, the things that it says would apply wherever you put the houses. It doesn't just apply to that estate.
Thanks, Barry.
Okay, thank you. So point of clarification from Councillor James.
Yeah, thank you, Barry, for your presentation today. I just wanted to ask a question. You mentioned that one of the ambulance officers mentioned that there would be huge problems in regards to one road in, one road out. Were there other circumstances that he presented in regards to other problems, or was it just the one?
Well, he felt that because it was going to be a lot of people from socio-economic circumstances into the town, that was going to put more, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Pressure?
Yeah, onto the ambulance service, and they were already under stress.
We know
I
that
think he's
situation.
also referring to previous cluster areas that he'd been involved with that were high density cluster, low income, where they intended to have a lot of visits for whatever reason.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to know what else was.
No, that was,
And I mean, I don't know what the police don't feel about it, because I haven't spoken to them, but I'm sure that they would find they were spending a lot of their time there.
Right, thank you, Barry.
I think, I'd just like to say our objection is not to low income housing, it's the fact that it's all going to be clustered together, which has been proven to be not the best option, and as that report says, it was demolished in Parkside Estate, and now you're planning to allow more to be put up. And as Barry said, the people that were the most interested and the most articulate about this problem were the ladies that had lived through it. And I don't know whether they're presenting or not, but they certainly were very against having a large cluster because of their past experience.
Okay, anyone else, any points of clarification? No. Thank you very much for coming in, Barry and Margaret, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Margaret.
It's such a serious issue to me because of my history and of involvement with North Shepparton residents, both public and private housing owners and tenants. I'm hoping that you have all had access to my background comment of the history of the 1970s till now. I had endeavoured to go up and give one to the meeting up at the other end of town, but I was unwell and couldn't do so. So I was going to hand it to Councillor Spinks on that night, and I didn't unfortunately get it, so I had to forward it in another way. All right, for all of that period, democracy has been at the heart of my principles and practice. I've been a paid or appointed public servant throughout my advocacy and lobbying with the North Shepparton community members and many hundreds in the broad and diverse community who worked together from 2000 to 2006 to oppose the Council Vic Urban Deed of Agreement for the 150 housing lot, endorsed by the State Government Minister in 2002. The Greater Shepparton City Council 7 was made up of 6 former City and Shire councillors and 1 new community member, elected in 1997 following the amalgamation of Victorian municipalities. The all-male council considered the decisions of the commissioners, ignoring the many objections, submissions and meetings with them in 1996 when they objected to the idea of it being redeveloped into something other than what it was before the Parkside Gardens naming and public parklands. Then they authorised that CEO, Bill Jabor, to handle all the procedures in both the International Village Parkside Gardens issue, which have been both undemocratic and lack of compliance with planning regulations, according to the then Act, LGA Act 1987 procedures, and now according to the Section 114 of the Local Government Act 2020 reforms. The Reforms Act followed 10 years of discussion with communities and the Ombudsman, to which I contributed, who is the person, groups or community representatives, including our committee reps, to go to when decisions are unjustly applied after submissions of objection or complaints are not given a fair hearing. This reform process of Planning states that it will provide a more democratic approach to meet the needs of council planning for all parties concerned, as I said in my last submission. That it's not happened again for us, and very undemocratically. I mean, I was only one of 39, and I know there were too many objections sent in at that stage. And I appreciate the fact that I was one of the 39 presenters and could have my say then that evening. But it's followed on from a history of my life. And I feel like I'm one of the wounded parties here too, I've got to say, because of my very close involvement with the families I worked with at that end of town and in Mooroopna too. And we ran weekly social meetings for them, and they brought along their families, and we coped with a lot of things, parenting needs and all of that sort of thing. It was a preventative program that we worked with. None of the like has happened again, I'm afraid, but it does happen in a non-government area, but we were attached to the department at that time that we were working, and we worked closely with the department to alleviate family breakdown and the costly expenses of furthering the protection of children and things like that. But anyway, we did some wonderful, joyous things too, and we were actually in their lives for quite some time, really. And the main area of my work, social welfare-wise, was up in the cluster units, as I've said in my submission. And that was a very heavy period for me of getting calls out at night even then, with attempted suicides, etc. And we were next of kin for a lot of people that had come here from other areas. So, you know, that was how we were called from the hospital. They're ready to go home, things like that. And walking with them throughout that following period if they hadn't actually accomplished the deed. And neither of the two that I worked with did, fortunately. But they carried on with us working here and, you know, living here and trying to adapt themselves to a better life. One fellow left because of it. He actually rang me at night and said, can you come up? She's locked in the bathroom and she's going to commit suicide. So look, to do this is just an appalling thought to me, to do this housing plan that you've got there and surrounding the Aboriginal keeping place that one of our members, Jenny Houlihan, actually, she was our member, and she, with us, she suggested that we put in a heritage application in 2004, and she worked very closely with community there and here, and like, I mean, all over the place really, because we were Greater Shepparton by that time. And we did actually have the people from Heritage Victoria come up, assess the site for built environment. The built environment is another issue of heritage, and for what it was worth, and it was worth a lot really to all our community as a village. Anyway, the upshot of it was that Jenny did put in a wonderful application, finally, after their visits up here and a meeting with them to say, yes, well, we think there is a lot of character to the place. So she put in a wonderful application, which I have here still, and then it was approved in September 2004 and sent to the council for further approval. And they had to make the final decision, of course, being the responsible authority. But by then, we'd had the actual demolition of the Chinese house and also the terrible movement of the Dutch community to deal with. And we had a lot of grief at that time, yeah. So,
Pat, we're just on the 6 minutes. Pat, we're just on the 6 minutes. Is there something you need to wrap up with?
Yes, I do. At the end of this submission, I've suggested that a better way would be to work with the money that we have, the community money that we have for this housing after my attendance on Friday. I've got lots of notes from there. And I know there's 700,000 to council for the empowerment program in the community. So I think that's great. And another suggestion from the minister was that they were going to set up a further preventative program here to work with families. And I've heard on the radio today that money's coming to us. So I think that's excellent. you know, that's an excellent result for us, and it's something to work with. And I think council can form a partnership with the Women's Housing Limited. It was a very veritable application, but they're not local. And we've got a shortage of people that will work 24/7 with our, you know, the women in family violence and the family violence people. So I know that because they're my colleagues now. So that's my wrap up. I had a little bit more, but thank you for hearing me, and I hope you do consider that, all of that I've said and approached you with, as a very serious observation of what should not happen, and it should not happen, that you place them there around the Aboriginal keeping place particularly, because they were so good with it all. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank
and
you,
I
Pat.
appreciate
We'll just see if any councillors need any point of clarification before we let you go.
All right. Yes.
Any councillors have any questions for Pat? No. All right, Pat, thank you very much. Always lovely to see you, and thank you for your ongoing passion for our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye now.
Welcome, Damien.
Thank you very much.
Just to let you know, it's a 6-minute session. At
Yes.
5, you'll hear the bell.
No worries at all.
Great. Get up when you're ready.
Okay. I'll just read out my submission if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. I purchased in Parkside Gardens Estate in the initial stages of stage 1 and was the second house built in the area. Purchased the estate due to security, safety, outlined in the design controls in stage 1, July 2007, which states new residential neighbourhood of 145 lots. Lots delivered in 4 stages, refer Master Plan Appendix 1. This is a new neighbourhood of high quality residential development that promotes environment, sustainability, good neighbourhood amenity, community, well-being, safety and security. What happened to the other 2 stages which never got implemented when heaps of other estates have gone ahead since? That's my first question. I'm not against social housing. In fact, it's needed in Shepparton. What I'm against is social housing in a concentrated, clustered environment, which we've all seen in previous history in Shepparton, which has not worked. Low-cost housing, social housing estates do not work. Shepparton's already had large areas of social housing pulled down, rebuilt, opened up to private buyers. Shepparton Council spent millions of dollars to create a better mix of public and private residences. In the northern part of Shepparton, having social housing estates does not provide a safe, secure environment. It leads to further poverty, increased crime rates, unemployment and unsafe living conditions. In my experience, social housing estates have an overrepresentation of crime statistics of all facets of crime, including drugs, family violence, in which you believe putting all protected persons in one area will help. 2021 crime statistics show 1,646 reported family violence incidents, which is a 1.5% increase, and almost 1,800 breaches of family violence intervention order, which is the greatest crime statistic in the Greater Shepparton area. You propose to put 45 houses of victims of family violence together, which will lead to the respondents knowing where the protected persons are, looking around for them because they're all in the same area, in turn creating further instances of family violence, associated crime, further mental health issues for those victims, putting further pressure on emergency services and associated support services. That is why we have women's groups like Marion Community, which place the protected persons in secure welfare so the respondent does not know where the protected persons is, so they can't commit further family violence. Have you spoken to women's groups about placing large amount of family violence victims in one area? Statistically, in my experience working with victims of family violence for over 15 years, women of family violence are at greater chance of having mental health issues, drug, alcohol dependence and other associated medical conditions, which you believe placing them in one area will improve their condition. Victoria document from November 2002 published from the DHHS Neighbourhood Renewal even outlines why low socio-economic housing should not be concentrated in one area. This is a direct contravention to this proposal. I'll give you a couple of examples from personal experience. Currently up in the Moira Shire, currently 18 flats in Numurkah which are rented to low-cost rentals, which are all in the one area. They have a large over-representation of drugs, assaults and family violence, which police attend on almost a daily occurrence. In Cobram, there's a large number of streets around Walliver Street, Blackwood Crescent, up in that area. I can go through other streets in that area. These are high government housing areas, low socio-economic areas, once again, well overrepresented in crime and drug family violence. These two examples alone, which are trying to propose in Parkside Estate, which is stated does not work. So where from here? There are numerous housing estates going up in Shepparton at the present stage. And as stated from research, government-funded housing needs to be integrated into the estates. Even an 8 to 10% housing purchased by the government for this program over a period of time. I've worked hard to support my family and I've seen the fruits of my work, especially in the last 2 years, for property values going up, like the rest of Greater Shepparton. This proposal will see housing values diminish in the short and long term. What type of compensation? Even this week, 2 houses in our estate have gone up for sale. Another one went up for sale 4 weeks ago, so 3 houses in the last 4 weeks have gone up for sale. So what's changed? What will make this work when it's proven it doesn't work? Why is it we need to try and reinvent the same thing? We keep going back. Yeah, my questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Damien. Any points of clarification needed by the councillors?
Damien, if I may, Damien, just a question. In that whole of Parkside Drive, there's potential 80 to 90 blocks of land that's there?
Correct, it's left in stages 3 and 4,
Yep.
around 90 something blocks here.
If the proposal of, say, 10% of those blocks were, say they're all developed, and 10% were for social housing, how do you feel about that?
In what I've written there, that would be fine. I'm not looking at 45, it's just way too many. If you're looking at an 8 to 10% mix of government and private housing, what would be 8 houses or whatever it is, no worries.
Okay, thanks, Baz.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Damien, sorry.
All right, thank you very much for coming in,
Thanks,
Damien.
No,
Appreciate it.
thank you very much, ladies.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
Hello, Sue and Maxwell. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Welcome.
Hello there.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure you already know we're Sue and David, or Maxwell Dowell. A little bit of background. We live in Evergreen Way, and the proposed development will be directly across the road from us. So these people, they'll be our neighbours, and these properties will be our neighbours. They're our direct neighbours, basically. So just a little bit of background on us. I've spent 34 years at
Government.
Centrelink in Shepparton, and David's been 30-something years with the Gulf Murray Water. We just want to say from the outset, I'm sure which everybody else tells you as well, we're definitely not against public housing, but what we are against is the concentration or the clustering of public housing. And that is our major concern. I do have a bit of a suggestion for the council to have a look at. I know that this development is going to take a long time in the planning process and in getting everything in order, even this process of you guys having a look at objections and things like that. I've also been following the objections to the development in the city. And I understand that the council owns a lot of land around, and that there is also a lot of money in projects and public housing at the moment. And I was thinking that maybe the council could still go ahead with the development of stage 3 and 4, because that was historically what was meant to happen with that land, and gift 10% or 15% of 20% of it to the actual people that are giving you the money now, instead of actually getting them to buy it from you. That would actually satisfy some more land in Shepparton, and people actually being able to have public housing, because I think we do need it and we should have it, and that's probably a good spot for it, but just not all of those houses in one spot. I would like the councillors to have a look at the neighbourhood renewal project and all of the investigation that was done back then, to actually the reasoning as to why the North End public housing was, a lot of it was disbanded, because it was actually shown by council's own investigations and own public money that was spent on investigations that it really wasn't a good idea to cluster those communities together. And you know, streets were renamed, houses were pulled down, and like that's something that I've seen in my historical role, even with Centrelink. Like I actually used to be what was called a field officer, and I visited lots of homes, and I saw the effects of putting people together in those sort of environments. So it'd be good if the council could have a look at that. I know it's a difficult issue, and I know a member of the public just giving you a suggestion or something, it's probably just a pie in the sky sort of thing, but I don't think any of us really know the answer. It's a really hard subject, it's a hard issue, and I don't think there's really just one solution for all of it. We've got some concerns with the road in and out. Even if the council was to go ahead with any sort of development, there's only one road in and out of our estate, plus the fact that apparently that the road is substandard and needs work. That we were told recently that's something else that the council needs to look at. Evergreen Way in itself has some problems that need to be looked at. We're also worried about, like, we've been waiting for 10 years. We moved into, built our house in 2012. And as far as we were concerned, stage 3 and stage 4 was going to go ahead. And now with that not going ahead, or this particular thing happening, we'd like to know, like, what's going to happen if you don't even sell the land, or the development doesn't go ahead. Should we have been actually asking the council earlier, you know, where's stage 3 and stage 4? It hasn't come out. We just thought that the council was taking their time, you know, because it takes a long time for issues to be resolved and for things for wheels to turn, especially in government, which I'm quite aware of. That's basically it. That's basically all we really wanted to say. I just wanted to also acknowledge and thank Sam and Fern for coming to our public meeting last week, which really helped a lot of the community. A lot of the community doesn't even live in this state, but they're also against the clustering of public housing, which I'm sure Fern and some are actually able to hear some of that feedback there. A lot of them won't actually face you. But they would certainly say their piece in those meetings. So thank you for that. But that's basically all I've got.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for that. And we've got Councillor Dobson just has a point of clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Just I'd like to clarify if and your idea, I listened to your idea of a percentage of the whole of the land being used. Would you and or the group up in that area be interested in sort of being some sort of advisory group to, you know, the public housing people in what if we put 10% of the properties in there, 10% of the housing?
Yep.
But you advise what you would like to see. Do you think that's an idea that could be promoted?
Definitely. Like all of us understand, and look, I'm under no illusion the North End has lots of public housing, and we still build there because the neighbourhood renewal project looked like it had worked. You know, things were improving down there. There wasn't a lot of clustering of the housing, so I would be interested in that. Yeah.
Good, thanks. And well done with your presentation.
No worries.
Okay, anything else? Anything else?
I would like a question, if that's okay. Sorry, can I ask a question?
Just a point of clarification.
Okay, when you were saying that you weren't sure if you should be writing letters to council about the stage 3 and 4.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, has anyone advocated to push that along faster?
The only thing that I've heard is that we had a real estate agent around to value our property once this came out, because we just weren't really sure what we should do. And he actually told us that he had made lots of representations to the council for stage 3 and 4 because of the lack of private building land, and he was just never able to get anywhere. Now that was, who was that, darling?
It was Kevin Hicks.
Yeah, Kevin Hicks. But basically, no. The rest of it, I just thought it would happen.
Yeah.
I was waiting for it to happen.
Understandable. Okay. Okay, any other councillors have any point of clarification? No? Okay, thank you very much for
No
coming.
worries.
Have a good holiday.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.